Well, hello everyone, this is Crystal and welcome back to my channel. So recently I've been very addicted to Oli. Basically every time when I order a latte at Starbucks, I'll ask for Oli instead of regular milk. So it is not an advertisement, but I truly agree with this company's mission. So to me personally, I'm not lactose intolerant, but I do believe that having a plant-based diet can help reduce the environmental problem in our society and also negative externalities if we want to discuss about this topic on an economic approach. So last year, this Swedish beverage company actually made its market debut in September, and in the US and slowly around the globe, the plant-based food and beverage market has been growing. And this company's CEO actually claimed that Oli is much better for the environment as a whole than the traditional dairy products because on an average, a liter of Oli's product consumed in place of regular milk will generate 80% less greenhouse gas emissions and around 60% less energy consumption. So just like many other vegan food companies like Beyond Meat that produces meatless burgers that are made from mushrooms and legumes, and also a fairly new company called XO. So that's a company that makes cricket protein bar. And these food companies all share common goals. That is to reduce the cost of health and environmental issues on land and air. So these external costs created by producers are called negative production externalities, which is the topic that we'll spend some time discussing today. So you might wonder what kind of harm or external costs that consuming too much of beef or cow milk will induce. So just like what we usually do, let's look at our market diagram here of for example, a dairy farm. So initially, we have our horizontal and vertical axis representing price and quantity. In a free market, if you recall what we have already talked about in the previous video, so demand is equivalent to marginal private benefit and marginal social benefit, and supply is equal to marginal private cost as well as marginal social cost. So they will together meet at this equilibrium state. But noting that here, we haven't calculated the cost of health in our environment. So these costs will only go to individual producers. So if you imagine yourself to be a dairy farmer, so this marginal private cost will include the wages that you pay to your workers on your farm and those food that you feed to cows on your farm, right? But now if you consider the costs that are external, including land, air pollution, and people's health, we'll see for every quantity here, there will be an additional cost represented by this purple vertical straight line. And this amount will be my negative externalities of raising cows. So those aren't the costs the producers will bear, but the whole entire society will together bear such a cost. And let's connect the dots right here, and we'll see a new curve that is known as MSC. So this is essentially the reason why we say that when there are externalities, supply and marginal private costs will diverge from marginal social costs. So previously, the condition that we considered was a free market without any externalities. So these three are actually equivalent. But now, MSC is greater than MSB. And the socially optimum quantity is right here, and where MSC and MSB intersects. So for all the units of output that are greater than this level, the society will be better off if there's less being produced. So this small triangular area right over here is my welfare loss because of overproduction towards dairy and beef products, and it also represents allocative inefficiency. So as cows have a considerable effect on climate change due to emissions of greenhouse gases like nitrous oxide and carbon dioxide, growing beef in a less developed nation will also lead to deforestation, clearing those lands for cattle. And perhaps a more common concern is that eating too much of red meat will likely to cause cardiovascular diseases. And this health issue, however, is pretty contentious, but it is a potential factor that we'll consider when we think about negative externalities. So again, MPC is the monetary cost of production, and if we add some additional external costs to MPC, we'll derive a curve that represents cost to society of producing one more unit of good, that is known as MSC. And why is this triangle the welfare loss? So let's go back to our free market here. And I believe that you have already known how to calculate the consumer surplus, producer surplus, and total social surplus, right? So for timing purposes, I'll quickly mark the boundary here. So this upper triangle is the consumer surplus, and above my supply curve, we have our producer surplus here. And when we add them up, we have our total social surplus or benefit. But now we have an additional factor that we must take into consideration. That is the value of external cost. It is simply the difference between MSC and the MPC up to the market equilibrium right here. And it will be this region. And now if we do some math here, the total benefits in market equilibrium condition are a social surplus minus the external cost. And we have this big triangle minus the small triangle right here. That will be our result. Okay, so far we have only discussed about the market equilibrium condition. So at the socially optimum level, at this red dot, the consumer surplus will shrink to this little triangle right here, and the producer surplus will also shrink. So as you can see, both are worse off. But we don't need to consider welfare loss anymore because we have zero externalities at socially optimal level. So total social benefits is this big triangle. And the final step is to compare these two results. So we can come to our conclusion that total social benefits and market equilibrium is smaller than the socially optimum level by the area of E. So according to the UN IPCC fifth assessment report, around 25% of the climate change problems, including greenhouse gas emission, deforestation, and land use, can all be attributed back to food production and consumption. And these are all negative externalities. So steaks are very delicious, but one serving of steak will actually contribute to 300 grams of carbon. And if we switch that to lentils, the emission will actually go down to only 2 grams. So that actually makes a huge difference. So as you can see, meat actually has a lot of carbon load, but you don't really need to be a vegan or a vegetarian. To simply reduce your meat intake, every little bit will help. And plus, those plant-based food options and also Cricket energy bars are super delicious. And those companies are really making an effort in reducing negative externalities, in my opinion. And I think they deserve our support. So in the future, I'll consider posting my vegan recipes on my WeChat officials. So stay tuned. So if you like this video, please give a like and leave a comment down below. And I hope to see you next time. Ciao.